Dr. Jazz.
No, but I'll just jump in. Like I have you on so many records, and I think I talked to almost everyone you played with, almost like from Mark Elias and Ray Anderson and Gerry Hemingway and Tim Byrne and all these guys and Marilyn Crispell and list goes on. But I want to start with your solo bass record, which is
Oh, thank you.
amazing, and it's so beautiful. The Times of Change.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
how did you approach this? And when did you start playing solo actually as a musician, also on stage? I mean, like, how do you prepare for that?
Well, I've been recording solo since 1983,
Well, already.
and it's always come out of the same spirit, which is I reach a point where how I'm interacting with my musical social environment or ensemble has reached some sort of natural impasse for whatever reason. And for me, the bass it's my sketch pad, it's my research mode. It's the place where it's the place where I can go deepest, because the bass seems so complete to me. And anyhow, so I started making solo music in 1983, and I think I was at a point where either I had come back from New York and I had done a gig, and it was like I needed more information. Either I was going to go back to school or going to move back to New York and do day gigs until I could figure it out. And I decided to go back to school, and it was just a moment where I could really jump into the woodshed. So I started recording solo, and I collaborated with a guy named Lamont Wolf in '83, and we just started recording and transcribing and documenting, and then we did some studio stuff to like not overdubbing, I guess there was some, but like basically using the studio as an instrument in of itself. So I did that intensely then. And again, so that was '83. The next time I think was around 2001 when I had asked Kent McLagan to build me pickups into my fingerboard, and I had a residency at Civatella Ranieri, which was an arts a retreat in Umbria, Italy. And I was invited to apply, and it gave me the opportunity to like begin mapping the bass, because those pickups kept me pickups embedded into the fingerboard that allowed me to amplify regions of the instrument that acoustically wouldn't be heard, that I always heard, and that always excited me. And so I literally just, I sat with a chromatic tuner, and I found out the names of every overtone and every bitone, and I mapped the whole fingerboard. And then once I did that, it was like, well, now what? How do you begin to organize this? So that, and basically I've been doing that since then. And of course, the pandemic was, well, even before the pandemic, well, I have this long friendship and relationship with Kent McLagan, who's a bass player in luthier in Denver, Colorado. And he built me these pickups because I had a gig and borrowed a bass from him in Denver, and I had already had someone build me pickups that suspended over
Mm.
the nut of the bass. And I said, man, this is becoming unstable. I sure wish I could have some built in to the fingerboard, and maybe not just at the nut, but maybe at a second place. So one string potentially becomes three
Yeah.
sounding string fragments. They said, oh, that's, a typical Kent way. Oh, that's interesting. Let me think about it. And then he had, and being just an innately curious person, he just started working on it, and then he'd mail me a cassette to New York, and I'd give him my opinions, and then we got to a point. He said, I think we're ready. Let's give it a go. Okay. So he had me remove the fingerboard off one of my basses,
Oh.
and I mailed it to him, and he embedded it. And since he's such an exacting person, he nailed it. I mean, he just executed it perfectly. And eventually I had him to do it on all my basses.
Wow. Okay.
And in 2000, that record Unveil
Mm-hmm.
was the first, that was sort of really focusing on what I found out. So it was sort of like, yeah, what became as a research project. I guess that was released in 2006. I don't remember the
I
release
think mid
date.
2000s. Yeah.
Something like that. So that was sort of the report on that. And I had already obviously been playing 4 or 5 years with it, and it figured some stuff out, and I recorded that with Roz Macy-Nye, who's
Yeah.
a very interesting musician in his own right, and a wickedly gifted recording engineer, especially to make this micro world big,
Yeah.
and so that was just good chemistry and good fortune, and yeah, and then they have people who were interested in supporting what I was doing. What label did that come out on? Cryptogramophone? No, Clean Feed.
Clean
That
Feed.
came out on
Yeah.
Clean
Clean Feed.
Feed.
Exactly.
And then Pedro's been remarkably supportive
Yeah.
with these projects. And then in 2010, well, actually, it was in 2009, I did this project called Deep Tones for Peace, where we did this telematic project. Well, we can get into the weeds of that, but where I was in Israel, and it's funny how these topics keep cycling back.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
we did this project with so J.C. Jones he sort of spearheaded the project with him and Bar Phillips, myself, and then also this composer named who's involved in telematics, a collaborator and composer of her own right, Sarah Weaver. So we sort of co-organized this. And once I was there, Jean-Claude, J.C. Jones, had his label called the Kadima Collective. And I was showing what I was up to. And he says, well, man, why don't you make a DVD for me? And so, and, also Zorn asked me to write an article about my stuff in 2000. So I was getting these invitations to continue.
Yeah.
So I followed up on all of them. In 2010, I put out Guts, which was kind of the state of my research on the bass. And I say research not in a sciencey or pseudosciency way, but in a real way, what I've discovered about the bass and tried to articulate and share.
Yeah.
Now, I got to say, I started teaching at a university in 2004, and my whole relationship with information changed. I was now being asked to share what I know, what I've experienced, and and so instead of, which the typical thing was anyhow, well, when Zorn invited me to write it out, that began the process of articulating and sharing and trying to be as transparent, not secretive, but to be the exact opposite. Not because I thought it was of any deepness intrinsically. I figured the more I reveal, that gives my brain more space to explore some more.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that's proved to be true. And then COVID happened. And then it was sort of like, now I did some telematic stuff, but it was certainly not enough. And also, post 9/11, my touring, especially being based in California, just reduced. So like I came to the decision that I think I want to take, this is 13 years after Guts. Well, it was at the time, it was 2020. It was 10 years after Guts. I said, I have a friend who's a violinist involved in the bass world named Fumiko Wellington. And I said, would you help me manifest this book? I want to write a book about, I don't know how much longer, I may have 5 years of teaching at the university, and I want to sort of pull it all together. And also I've learned a bunch of stuff in the last 10 years that I want to formalize. So, or and I wanted to do it in a book form. And also it's just sort of like, there was first of all, to bring all the ideas to another fine point and want to do it more dimensionally. And then also we have the changing medium of what's a book? Well, books still exist. What's a CD? Huh? What's a CD? Doesn't almost it's an anachronism. What's a DVD?
Oh.
What is, the only thing that we know is that it's important for an artist to continue to document one's work. And unlike the other projects, no one asked me to do this. So for that reason, it's been the hardest one to do, because it feels like I'm doing it for myself, which is, of course, that's true in a way, but it's bigger than that. I'm really trying to, be as generous and as I can with, with what I want to show. So that's been, so the solo CD, back to your original question, came about. I asked Kent in 2014 finally to build me an instrument. Someone had offered a very fine bass maker wanted to build me a bass, and I was really flattered. And I said, I just thought to myself, I need to do this with Kent, because Kent knows exactly what I'm trying to do. And he's an emerging maker, and he's working and has an ear like an acoustician. And even if he's doing things really unorthodoxly, and he is, the way he builds basses is completely out of the box, pragmatic, and it's not in the tradition of fine lutherie. It's coming out of acoustics and fine woodworking, but not lutherie, which has to there's a difference. So he uses woods. He's trying to make an eco bass, one that's non-endangered woods. He does crazy things, are really pragmatic things. He has like a side door so he can get in and move and grid the sound post really precisely. Wow. He uses woods that no one uses. And he made a bass without a scroll that weighed under 50 pounds for traveling. So I had very, very specific needs. And then I wanted to have my pickups built in too. And then I asked him, I had this idea for these metal tines. And it was sort of a hybrid between an instrument that the composer Robert Erickson made called stroked rods, which were aluminum rods that you played with gloves that were rosined. And it was between that and a waterphone and an imbira, something
Yeah.
in between there. So I didn't know how to attach it. I didn't know what the tuning. I didn't know how many we just began from zero. And the first bass, I think the first iteration, I got the bass in 2015. Yeah, I asked him to build it to me in 2014, 2015. I had the bass, and then I had the first set of rods that were really playable. He had built me a couple others that weren't ready for any kind of performance. And I premiered it at the International Society of Bassists in 2015. And then since then, he's probably made me 10 or 11 different iterations of this idea with different tunings, different metals, different ways of attaching it. You know, it's been just like this long science project. And it's something like, and this guy is not, I'm not like paying him on the clock at all. It's just like people who play. It's a labor of love, of exploration. So he's so it's like, and so I said, well, and he's so modest about everything. Oh, I don't know, give me something. And I always give him more money because I have some idea of what the time is.
Sure.
So like, yeah, it's been an invaluable relationship, it's that synergy, these human relationships. That's the best part of music, next to the music itself, and maybe even more.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, where do you share the things that you care about most with people who get it and who have similar values. So your community is not those who you live next to. Your community is who are those people that you're sharing the things that mean the most. So back to the recording. So I got version 7 or 8 of the Tines, and I thought that I liked this one. Actually, there are 2 of them I like. So let me try recording with it. So in 2019, now this is before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I went into this. I had a graduate student who was a trumpet player and a recording engineer, and she said to me, "Man, I'd like to record that. Those are cool sounds." And I said, "Okay, great, let's do it." So we went into the studio, and she's a very gifted person, Alexandria Smith, and now she teaches at she has a professorship, tenure track professorship at Georgia Tech, which is a really fine school. Mm-hmm. She had been also at Tulane University in New Orleans for the last few years. Anyhow, so we recorded this stuff while she was still a student, and then we didn't do anything with it for a year. But we started editing it and putzing with it, and we had about, I don't know, we had like 45 minutes worth of music, and I said, well, let me just send this around. I think this sounds really good. So I sent it around to Clean Feed. I sent it to Pyroclastic. I sent it to one other thing. Everyone immediately responded, yes, I want to put this out.
Sure.
And now for a solo bass record, that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I know, but
or rarely happens. I mean, I have to say, Pedro has always been supportive. In fact, he reissued Unveil, and he would have put it out sooner than, I'm saying Pedro of Costa of Clean Feed. He would have put it out a year sooner than Pyroclastic. But what Pyroclastic offered was a publicist, which meant that it was going to get reviewed, and I just thought that would benefit me more. And then also, I had visited Kent, and he had made a 5-string bass that I loved. And I said, Kent, would you make me a 5-string bass? And then would you make a set of tines for it? So he did the same. He built a bass like, you know, in less than a year, five strings, pickups built into the neck, a set of tines, you know, just like, and so then, you know, I basically had it I got it in, you know, I basically recorded with it like, you know, like a month or two after I got it, you know, and then we, you know, and that we added that to the other 6 tracks. So we, I think, added 3 or 4 extra tracks. So that's the genesis of that record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
beautiful.
you know, and so like, I feel like I'm still in this mode. I'm like still pushing to finish this book, even though I did a lot of performing in June, July, New York. Basically, I've been in seclusion, you know, working on just in the shed, just gestating this new material. And it's both beautiful and it's odd as hell. You know, I look forward to, you know, reemerging, you know, into a more focused performing modality. And of course that will happen. It always does. You know, as long as I keep my health together and I work on that. Okay, that's the answer. Question.
No, I wanted to ask you. You said you know, like performing and group. I wanted to ask you about your groups. I mean, the Mark Dresser 7, and we mentioned Pedro before, Clean Feed. And are you still composing for groups as well? I mean, do you have something in mind, like in the future for I love your bands. I've always loved, you know, like, and your compositions. Like, are you still working on some of that stuff?
The answer is, once I finish this, I will focus on the next project. Like, I can't do more. I can't do more than that. You know, then I'll give it when I wrote the 2 books for the septet, and that came to me too. That was sort of the Shifting Foundation approached me and asked me to do something, and I offered them a bunch of projects, and then it seemed like the one that they were interested, that I was interested in, was the 7.
Yeah.
And so I dropped everything. That summer I didn't tour. I just went into composing mode, because it just takes too much of my concentration to. I can't like be on the road, and I don't write quickly. I don't write easily. I just kind of labor over shit until I kind of get it right. And the deadline, of course, is, I mean, that's how it feels. Sometimes I get lucky and some things come quick, but generally it's, you know, and then yeah, it's like you write and you rewrite. That's how it is for me. You know.
Well, yep. What's your composer's mode? I mean, how do you start? You know, I did like lead sheets of your tunes, and you know, I sometimes get puzzled. Like, okay, shit, this is like a 7/4 Black Arthur's Bones, I think, and then I tried writing out stuff, and I'm like, shit, is this like written out, or is this improvised already? Like, how do you approach composition?
Well, there's, you have different agendas, different things that you're interested in. I mean, one of the things was, this fascination with rhythm. I'm not the only. I mean, this is sort of what can I say? It's the domain that keeps on giving, and then it was sort of like, I was always really I loved, I still love Mingus, and I loved what he brought with metric modulation to the idea of tempo changing in the music. And I thought, well, what would that be taken to the next level? And this is an idea that, I had worked with Gerry Hemingway when we both lived in Connecticut, and something, again, these are things you share with your colleagues and you figure out ways to do it. and it becomes, what's the word? It just becomes another well of investigation. So for me, I will focus on that parameter first. And then, I was saying, again, it was like there were some tunes like Digestivo, Aperitivo, Pairwaltz, or especially the first two I mentioned, the idea of, well, let's see how this structure works on a blues. That was sort of, the blues is always kind of like the holy grail of jazz structure. If it will work on the blues, it's robust enough maybe to take in another direction. So that's, I think yeah. So of course, all this, that one, I think well, anyhow, I would just go deep into that until I kind of figured it out. And it's just, again, it's a laborious process, but laborious and rewarding. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
But it has emerged from just going into the, personal woodshed. And then, when those moments where you can actually work with someone, work with a band, and, see how it comes together in social communion, that's a beautiful thing. And then you have collaborators who are behind it, and that's and then you try to find those virtuosos, those players that you share commonalities with. Obviously, someone like Denman Maroney has been a key collaborator for, from the late 80s, clearly to 2000, till I moved to California. Really, he became like, once we played together, I said, oh, he actually hears timbre and sound and microtonality very similar to the way I do, and he thinks about rhythms similarly as well. So I'm going to put him in the center of all my bands, and I will build around him and that language. So that's sort of what I did.
Yeah, did that on Forest Green, right, already, and those records, Invocation. I think. I love that stuff.
Yeah, Forest Green, and then exactly, and then then we have a duo record. We've done several duos, and then finally a trio with Matthias Ziegler, who had heard the stuff with them, and he said, and he had sort of a polyphonic, extended technique, sonically altered way of playing the flute, and very similar, shares many similar qualities that both Denman and I share. So, and it was really his idea. I'd love to do something with you and Denman. So I said, okay, well, I'll figure that out. So then I started, we created a couple opportunities, and started in, I want to say 99. And we did our last gig in the summer. We did a radio broadcast, podcast. What was it? Podcast, I guess.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, so that continues, at distance with long intervals of, repose.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned Connecticut before, and, there seems to be some, what was happening, like, I don't know, mid-70s, there's like you and Gerry Hemingway and Ray Anderson and Mark Elias and all these guys, like, how was the scene back then? I know it's a long time, but like, it's all of you guys followed such creative paths, like, yet still together in a sense. I mean,
well, I ended up there by accident. And I took a 3-week vacation to New York with a girlfriend, and we stayed at David Murray's loft. But he wasn't there. Ray Anderson was living there, and someone threw a brick through my back window. And so then it was like, where do we park the car? My girlfriend had a friends in New Haven. And so we brought the car up there. And then after 3 weeks doing all this cool stuff musically, I said, why are we going back to California? So we stayed, and New Haven just seemed like a more approachable place. Gerry was from Connecticut, so he was living in the area, auditing classes at Wesleyan, had a radio show. He's always been like a next level organizational genius, and gifted composer and musician. And Mark Elias, Anthony Davis, they were both going to school at Yale. And actually, I brought Ray up there to do a duo gig with me because he lived in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And after that duo gig, Elias and Hemingway and Ray became a trio, and I went back to California soon after. So and then, Wadada, Leo Smith was living there at the time. He was Leo Smith.
Yes.
And he was raising a family in near New Haven. And so, I think Yale was, that's what brought, Elias and Anthony Davis, and George Lewis had been there before I had, and Robert Dick. It was just a fine music school, and there were a lot of gifted people who had the appetite to push forward.
Yeah. When did you move then to New York? Back, I mean, because you went back to New York, right? Like mid-'80s, or?
Yeah. So first time I lived in New York, I was in the East Coast between, what was it? 72 to 75, I think.
Oh, okay, already. Okay.
No, I got that wrong. 75 to 77. 75 to 77. Yeah. It was 2 years. And then I came back, and then I started doing CETA programming. I moved back to New York in 1986.
Okay. Already.
Yeah. In 1983, around 1980, I decided to go back to school to finish my bachelor's.
Okay.
And then I started a master's degree. I was studying with the great Bert Turetsky.
Yeah.
And someone said, Dresser, why are you staying here? You're already playing with the best guys. Why don't you go to Europe? And I got pissed off, and because I applied, and I got a Fulbright to study in Rome with Franco Petracchi.
Wow.
Which was great. And then the Fulbright was 1 year, but we stayed 2. And I might have stayed even longer, but then I got a call from Gerry Hemingway that Braxton fired his bass player and needed someone to finish the tour.
Oh, wow.
And then, I think the first concert actually was in Ljubljana.
Really? Serious? I have to find the date when this was. Well,
that would be, I'm guessing,
that's right.
Was 85, summer 85, I think. And I remember Woody Shaw was on the. He was on the. It
was the festival, probably. Yeah.
It was the festival for sure.
Yeah.
And Braxton, they arrived late, and we just have a sound check, and he's playing a continuous set.
How did you cope with the music? Like the first night?
I was like, and one of the pieces was a 50-page score.
Yes, what?
He pulled off all the hardest shit. It was kind of like, okay, deal with this.
Yeah.
So like I'm playing, I said, Hemingway, what page are we on? I'm borrowing a bass. I don't even have my own instrument.
Oh man.
And I was sure I was fired at the end of the evening, and I was there for 9 years.
Wow.
So
that's a bizarre start. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Trial by fire. It was beautiful. Playing with Braxton was the greatest. Yeah, it was just it was wonderful.
But it's also probably beautiful because you connected with Gerry in that band, right? That you
Once
guys,
again,
yeah, right.
yeah, because we had already known each other.
Yeah.
We had put in serious time with, just when we lived in New Haven. We also played together with Ray Anderson, so we had history and, most importantly, chemistry and shared values, shared things that we were both interested in, and we're happy to talk about them and dig into them.
Yeah.
Yeah, my friendship with Gerry Hemingway has been one of the great gifts.
Definitely, yeah. And also musically, I mean, when I hear you guys together playing,
Yeah,
it's just like, it's amazing.
yeah.
So
I
beautiful.
don't even understand it. I don't understand it. I always felt like we made a career of making mistakes work.
Come on. No, yeah, okay. But did you like, you don't understand it, you said, but like, did you talk a lot with Braxton or like with Gerry about his music, like about Braxton's music, how to approach compositions, or like how did that work, like the work in progress? I mean,
No, I mean, in 9 years, I think we may have had 2 rehearsals.
well,
So like, a rehearsal would be on the train singing the rhythms of the charts.
oh man, okay, crazy.
So, it was just, sound checks. That was it. And then he had a book of like 300 tunes. Olivia, I'm carrying this much music. And he would pull different tunes every night. So there was rarely repetition.
Wow.
It was different every night. And that was really beautiful. And the thing is that he was always happy with what happened if you were giving your all. Yeah. So anyhow, it was a very, very expansive, the second most expansive time musically. The first time I would have said that, coming up in 70, from 72 to 74, prior to going to New York the first time, I was playing with the Black Music Infinity. That was led by Stanley Crouch in LA, and then included David Murray and Bobby Bradford. Arthur Blythe. In fact, Arthur Blythe and Bobby Bradford and Stanley. I mean, they were, especially Bobby and Arthur, they were the elders, and then the kids, up and comers, were James Newton, myself, and David. I was a few months older than James, maybe a year or two older than David. So I started playing when I was 20. So we were all like 19, 20, 21, around at that age, playing with these guys. It was really, really exciting. That was another really expansive thing, but it was like, it was in LA, so we had no resonance in the community. We had no resonance internationally. We were just doing it for the love of the music. Whereas with Braxton, he had this big reputation, and we would be on international tours, and was like, it was, professionally another level, as well as musically being another level.
Yeah.
So that really, helped me so much in every way.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you, I mean, you mentioned Denman Maroney before, and how did you meet him?
How did we meet?
Yeah, how did you meet him? I mean,
well, he came to hear Braxton when we played at the Knitting Factory, and he gave me a cassette. And I listened to it. I thought, oh, this is cool. Okay. And then, I didn't think, and then he invited me to do a gig with him at PS1, I think, the little public school that had a new music series. And then once we played, it was like, oh shit, I hear how he's hearing.
Yeah.
So like, then it was like, okay, this is this. I didn't get that from the cassette he gave me. It was just like, and he's he's both a really good improviser and and quite a thinker and intellectual. And so like he's got like really two sides of his brain that we connect with. And so, he and I would really talk about things, and then we'd also get together weekly and improvise. And when we would discover something that we would like that was different and new, we'd stop the music. I said, "What the hell was that, Denman?" And we tried to give it a name or just try to describe it, and then go on and do it to the next time. So sort of way informally cataloging these new areas. So it wasn't. And that's how we sort of started to develop stuff.
Yeah. When did you start leading bands? How did you decide to, because like I see mid-90s, you kind of started doing a lot of your own stuff with Denman, and how did you decide for that group also with, Dave, Douglas, and Theo? And I love that band. That's killing.
Thank you. Well, I started leading bands when I lived in Rome.
Oh.
Well, actually, before then, I put together some groups. They were mostly cooperatives, but really band leading when I moved to Rome. I started composing earlier, but because I had done all that solo recording in the early, late 70s, early 80s, and I had a trio with Diamanda Galas and Jim French.
Wow.
And we've all and then there were a couple San Diego things, but really I became really a band leader in Rome, and I had this wonderful quintet with American late clarinetist named David Keverly, the amazing pianist named Antonello Salis.
Sure. Oh yeah, he's an accordion. Yeah. Oh, really?
Accordion player. Yeah,
he's amazing. I didn't know that.
And then,
okay.
And saxophonist, I had two of them. First one was Maurizio Gianmarco.
Yeah, sure.
Very fine. And then Sandro Sata.
Yeah, I know these guys. Yeah.
Yeah. So so anyhow, we're still buddies, and we recently played together with Sandro and Antonello. Yeah. So So these relationships that continue, that's so great. I love that. So what was the question? About putting bands together. So like, I guess, well, I was seeing that everyone was, when I moved to New York and back to New York in '86, I was side manning with Tim Byrne and with Ray Anderson, and then playing with Braxton when there was work. And then I put together a cooperative group called Arcado with
exactly.
Mark Feldman and Hank Roberts. And that was really it really allowed me to get into the string stuff that I was able to explore soloistically and put it onto other string instruments. So that was really a gas. And then I was saying that, there were these labels that were putting out records of, that would record Tim, and then Hank would be making a record for him. And then I realized, well, shit, let me lead a band. So I formed a quintet, and I just picked people who I thought I could deal with both on the sonic level as well as the rhythmic level, and as I was figuring out the rest. So, I heard Theo Bleckmann sing with Kirk Nurock, and I was really impressed with his musicianship and sound. And so what I would do is I'd get together and play with these guys duo and record, and we'd improvise, and I'd ask them to sort of help me define their vocabulary, and I would sort of write, I figured out language, how to describe certain things that they would do. So I did that with Dave Douglas, and of course Denman was involved, who already had that going on with. And then Phil Haynes was in the neighborhood and had a studio, and I invited him to do it. So that became the Four String Quintet.
Yeah.
And then, you know, but band leading is so it's just I mean, you're not. It's band leading is also the gigs, the business, you know, I it's very rewarding. It's exhausting,
Yeah.
and but and I think at a certain point, you know, I was working with an agent and with Ray, a guy named Ralph Gluck,
Yeah, sure.
and I wanted to, and so he agreed to do a solo tour for me, and then I said, Ralph, I really like to do a tour as a leader. He said, well, listen, you're playing so much as a sideman, it's going to be really hard to sell it. He says, but if you do a project with silent film, there's some energy in doing that.
Mm.
And I had never taken an external idea before and embraced it. And in fact, I was allergic to someone telling me to do something and then trying it. I was sort of like that felt inorganic. But once I watched the film a bunch, I started improvising and recording, and I said, actually, this might actually be cool.
Yeah.
And it kind of worked really well. So I started off with the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari,
Yeah.
and then I soon learned that the videos that I was watching of these silent films were because of incompatibilities of speed were I forget what percentage they ran, like let's say 12% faster than they were intended to run. So like there's this, so that changes the whole dimension of the music. And eventually we were performing more often than not with 16 millimeter film.
Wow.
So my first tour was as a leader was doing silent film.
Wow.
And I did it with a trio with Dave Douglas and Denman.
Really? Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Did you always write for the players? I mean, I get a feeling like you specifically, like, those Forest Green, like for Theo and Dave, like that you hear their voices. Like, did you always have them in mind when you wrote those tunes, or?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
For sure. For that book, absolutely. I always loved the Ellington model
Yeah.
that you write for individuals. That just seems so human and so the aspect I love the most about the jazz tradition, the embrace of the individual. It's like, now, everyone has crazy skills. Like, yeah, but I always gravitated sort of those personal imprints, and I wanted to focus that and see what you could make with that. And of course, that notationally was the hardest thing to do because you can't weigh timbre, sound color. You can't weigh pressure. You can't weigh. There's lots of aspects of music and in nature that are not easily put on a grid.
Yeah.
And notation lends itself to the grid. So the grid tends to shape the music. And so like I really felt that was, and especially, being so immersed in the bass, I saw that was really not about, that really went against the idiomatic gifts of the bass that were, in my mind, so underexplored and so vast.
Yeah.
And to this day, I still think about that, and and I'm trying to articulate it too. And as so, and anyhow, just how people express that stuff. Of course, you can do it improvisationally, and of course I do that. But teaching teaching contemporary music, I have students who are playing scores that are like intense tablatures, and that I mean, and written with such detail that have to be translated, not just they can't easily be accessed. They have to be translated into bite-sized bits, because there are pieces, in fact, that it's about the movement rather than the sound that's leading the piece.
Yeah.
And that's not to mean that the person writing it doesn't love the sound, but they're leading with physical gesture. So anyhow, it goes in lots of different directions.
Yeah.
And, and in the end, in this setting that I most often perform, which is in a small group setting, usually there's not much rehearsal time. How can you communicate the most, as dimensionally and as possible and efficiently as possible?
Yeah.
That's a challenge to this day.
Yeah. And your music is not really easy also. So that's, when I listen to it, it's so much complex stuff. So to rehearse that, on sound checks, that's, man.
Yeah, well, no, you can't do it,
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's why the telematic thing really turned out to be great. I could work with Michael Dessen and work on these structures. I work on these tunes, and we weren't that physically far, so latency. He could be in Irvine, California, and we'd have this, these metric modulating tunes or phased metered tunes, and we could work it out and figure out how to, to play it, at distance, so that, that's something I can't do with very few people.
Sure.
But that seemed to be the promise of, that seemed one of the potentials that were revealed during the pandemic. And I would have hoped that performing at distance could have actually been a viable reality to to reduce the carbon footprint, because there's no doubt that you can do really humanly and musically rich performance like that. No doubt in my mind. And the thing is, we get on a plane, travel 20 hours or 14 hours or whatever to play for, 100 or less, mostly white males,
I completely got you. Yeah.
It's sort of like, come on, this is just, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to play, but there's got to be a better way. Yeah.
Yeah, but the pandemic showed this. Yeah, some positive sides there were. That's for sure.
But we all wanted to go back to our life the way it was, and we saw that pollution started to clean itself out when there was less activity.
Right.
But of course, as soon as we can, we're back to the same wasteful ways.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if that will come around again, but that was always my hope with the telematic thing, is that, maybe there's a way for musicians to get paid and not get on that plane, and to do something really beautiful and something unlike you could ever get in live performance.
Mm-hmm.
That was not something less, but something more and something different.
Yeah.
And maybe even some sort of hybrid form where you have multiple locations with multiple live audiences. We explored this, and I've seen success in it, but to make that institutional, that would take probably another pandemic to get people to really commit to it.
Yeah, reprogram the whole concept and actually, yeah. But yeah, there is potential. I love doing this long distance recordings also with musicians and improvisations, and it works. In the end, you listen to the results, and it's like we're in the same room. Actually,
Yeah, there's no distance. You know,
No,
you're what
yeah.
you're 9 hours or 10 hours ahead of me.
Yeah.
It's nighttime, it's daytime here. There's no doubt we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we're communicating. You know, the only time if we try to count together 1, 2, 3, 4 at the same time, we'll see, oh, there's some lag here.
Yeah, exactly.
But
yeah.
but if we were clever, we figure out a way to ameliorate that with musical choices.
Yeah. True. Yeah, there's much beauty in this as well. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree, you know. But Mark, like I said, I will not take too much of your time, but like I just speaking of traveling to play
Yeah.
for 100 people in no, do you have any plans of coming to Europe in the future, like touring wise, or like what are
Yeah.
your plans for the future? I mean,
Well, the only thing that's on the books, I mean, I really wanted to do a solo tour. I really wanted to do a septet tour. Both the septet tour got twice canceled because of COVID.
ah, shit, man.
And now no one remembers that I had recorded a septet.
That's,
you know,
that would be such a great band to see, man.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And we played last at the Vision Festival. And that was a lot of fun. Of course, septet's expensive. And a solo, you know, I was supposed to do 2 solo tours similarly, couldn't get traction. But I have this trio, improvised trio called Jones with Larry Oakes and Vladimir Tarasov. And both those guys, I mean, besides being wonderful people and incredible musicians, you know, make work happen. You know, do that hard work.
Yeah.
You know, through decades of relationship building. Again, it's, you know, this relationship, you know, there's a lot of that in this thing, because people can make choices based on lots of people who are worthy. There are lots of worthy people who, you know, are worthy of hearing and bringing to your community. Anyhow, so we have something on the books for mid-May.
Oh, super.
Yeah. I don't know exactly where we're playing, but there's something in clearly in Vilnius and
oh, super.
Yeah, the Mama Jazz Festival, I believe. And anyhow,
super.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah, but that's the next thing I know. And then I have a couple things. I have a residency at the Stone in I think in September 25,
okay.
and in 24, and then also one in 25.
Wow. Okay, that's a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But super.
So
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
all right. Well, thank you very much. Is
yeah.
there anything
Thanks.
else I can?
No, I mean I'll let you go, and thanks for sharing some of these thoughts.
Sure,
I
thank you.
Appreciate taking the time. And
yeah, thank you for your interest. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I was a slow dance. You know, I kept, but
I was persistent enough. So
yeah, you were, and I was just like, Dr. Jazz, come on.
There's a story behind. There's a story behind that. Why?
Dr. Jazz.